So Tien and I worked, for people here, Tien and I worked together at Salesforce.com a bunch of years ago. So I know Tien, I looked up, I actually realized when you moved here from, was it Taiwan when you were 3 to the States? And was it New York area?
Gosh, yeah. I was in New York. My parents and my brother are still there.
Yeah. Fast forward. And then, so sorry. And do you remember, so you worked at Cross Worlds, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember a company called Extricity?
Yeah, your dad was there, right? Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realize you guys might have been competitors way back when.
We were, I think so. For a couple of years. I was there for about just under 2 years.
And then Tien went on to be the 11th employee at Salesforce.com. So you started there in 99 or so. I started 2002. So there's probably still about 150 people when I started. Got to know you there and worked together on and off until I left in 2006. And when did you leave Salesforce?
2008.
2008, yeah.
January 2008.
Yeah, to join as at least CEO of Zora and the subscription platform, billing platform, and then wrote a book. Actually, it's a bit of a long book, the name. Sorry, Subscribe, Why the Subscription Model Be Your Company's Future and What to Do About It. So the reason why I really wanted to bring you on for Chaz, because now with the whole, what's going on these days, I feel like I've been through a couple downturns. I know you've been through, if this is your third, and there's just a lot of perspective you get from going through that. And I think where I wanted to start with was things you've learned from the past, how you're applying that today. Like even starting with like how you're personally handling lockdown as a CEO of how many people at the company?
We're about just over 1,200 people, close to 1,300 people now.
Yeah. So kind of like what your day is like and honestly how it's changed since you guys went virtual.
Sure. Yeah. We could talk a lot about that. So some of the downturns are certainly similar, but this one is very different because of the shelter at home place. Just to kind of put this stuff in context, you joined Salesforce in 2002, or was there 99? And sort of people sometimes forget what it was like back then. When we started Salesforce in 99, there was no Wi-Fi. People did not have high-speed bandwidth in the home, and so the internet was just getting started. And there was no such thing as for the tech folks out there, no style sheets. JavaScript wasn't really encouraged. We were trying to create our pages to be less than 50K because what happens is most people were logging into the internet in a 56K.
Or maybe DSL.
No, DSL wasn't around then. Maybe Benioff had it, but the rest of us.
I don't remember.
Yeah, and hotels didn't have Wi-Fi yet, and so we had made an early bet on the internet, and so and then 2001 hit, 2001, and all our customers initially were what now we call the .coms, right? The web vans, the pets.com, a lot of those type of companies, and we just started seeing them drop like flies throughout the year. And, you could just sort of tell these companies were getting their funding pulled. They didn't have a business model. And so it was pretty dark days for a while, but, we really kind of refocused the company and said, hey, well, what is the market given all this change? And we found is that mainstream companies were very willing to use what we now call software as a service, because the terminology wasn't even there before, just because they didn't have any cash, they didn't want to spend money on big software. And so we pivoted the business to really pursue mainstream companies. And it took us about a year to kind of cycle through that. And the rest is history, right? And so in a downturn situation, there's always opportunities, right? There's always, parts of the economy that are doing well, parts of the economy that are not doing well. Zora, where we help companies with their subscription businesses. So all our customers are subscription businesses. We've been doing this study and to kind of help people sort of navigate this. And what we found is certainly there's pockets of the economy, stay at home. Zoom is one of our customers. You see they're on fire. I see a guitar here. Colin, is playing guitar on the screen here. But Fender Play actually, decided to make their product free for 90 days and had over 1 million people sign up for this video service that teaches you how to play your Fender guitar. On the other side, there's certainly companies focused on the transportation sector, companies focused on the hospitality sector. So in these downturns, it's really about just kind of stepping back, understanding the lay of land, understanding where things are going well, focusing your energies on there, and adjusting and pivoting really, really quickly.
Yep. And right, this downturn is very different. Like there's really been nothing like this in the world. What about 2008? That was another big one. Any other differences this time? Or I mean, phrase that maybe from 2008. There's the 2000 downturn. Was there a big difference with 2008? You were already at Zora. Were you at Zora by then?
Yeah, we had started Zora. We had just literally, so if you time it, when Lehman Brothers went out of business, I think it was September 2008, we had just signed a Series B term sheet. We didn't have the cash yet. So it was about 2-3 weeks we were wondering if we're going to get the cash. And I had Mark Benioff calling me because he was one of our early investors. He continues to be an investor. And say, look, you got to get the cash flow break even as fast as possible because the world's out of cash. There's never going to be another dollar of VC money. And, it looked pretty dire then, because it was a big, big unknown. And I was like, Mark, look, we don't have any revenues yet. So, but we were lucky. We put, I think, about $20 million in the bank. And we decided not to use it, right? We used it very, very sparingly. We kept our burn the same, right? Really focused on selling companies, right? Where was the opportunity in the marketplace. And actually got to cash flow break even first quarter, about 5 quarters later. And then the economy started coming back, right? You could sort of see things and we started building the business from there. And so I think rule number one is never run out of cash, even in a downturn, and really just kind of step back, see where the opportunities are and be aggressive in those veins, but just be really, really conservative on cash.
Yep. I think it's easy to, especially these days, to kind of hope things go back to the way that within a few months, like back to the way they were. But it seems like, my guess, not that I would know any better, but it's going to be like a year or two at least before, like face-to-face selling is just not going to come back the same way ever. It'll be less, it'll come back, but it's going to be, you got to embrace the world and the changes rather than hope they're going to unwind. Yeah.
So I think the key thing is we have all the scenarios, we have all the predictions, but the key thing is to recognize that you're in an unknown world, right? And so you do all the scenarios, you do all the predictions, but you got to recognize that you don't know what it is, right? And so you have to keep your options open. That's why preserving cash is really, really important, because you have to be able to survive all the different scenarios. And so every scenario that you lay out there has to have a path, right? And if it turns out the economy is coming back faster than you thought it was, then how do you be ready to be aggressive at that moment in time, right? But if it turns out the economy is going to take 2 years, then how do you make sure that you survive those 2 years? And so that's kind of the balance of it. And so decision making in a time of uncertainty is very, very different than decision making when you can sort of look out and make forecasts for 12 to 24 months.
Yep. And I'm actually curious now that you went from having a company where, I don't know how many people were your headquarters, but how has your leadership style or work style had to change now that everyone is distributed at Zora?
Well, we were fortunate enough that where there was a good chunk of our employee base, we're fairly distributed, right? At Salesforce, again, it's a different time and place. It's 2002 when you joined, right? We were very hub centric.
Yep.
The dominant phone at the time was the BlackBerry, which is still really an email device, yep. Right?
I remember having one of those.
Yeah. We didn't have iMessage, messengers, right? Everyone had an iPhone. It wasn't really like that. And so I think the world's gotten used to collaborative tools. The world's gotten used to Zoom. The world's gotten used to Slack. And in the tech sector, we tend to be ahead of the game. And so we were already fairly distributed. We're not as hub centric as Salesforce was way back then. A lot of our employees, had the ability to work at home. It is different when everybody's at home. But we found really two things. We found that one, it's a great equalizer. So you say face-to-face selling is never coming back. It's hard to disagree with that, but I don't know where it's going to be, because right now everybody's at home. So when you're selling, right, I know a lot of your listeners are obviously in the sales profession, and your customers are all stuck at home. Then it is a great equalizer, right? And you can actually find that you can actually reach more people or different people than perhaps, when you had to go to their offices and everyone was just kind of busy. But when it goes into a hybrid environment, right, when you some countries go back to work, some countries don't, some states go back to the office, some states don't. I think it's going to be an interesting environment, and we're going to have to sort that through. I don't know how it's going to land.
Yeah, it seems like the states will be a little bit of a 50 experiments on how far, fast, or not to unwind things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know, I moved in January. I moved with most of the family to Scotland.
Yeah.
So,
is that where you are? Is that, it says patisserie? I was guessing Paris.
No, that's a kids thing. We made an IKEA thing. I also added the awning to for fun, but didn't have space in the other room, so I stuck it in here just for fun. I'm doing like a little daddy coffee shop, tea shop in here just for fun with the kids sometimes.
Like a whole clan to Scotland. Wow.
I know, yeah. Well, the 5 youngest, and then we had 3 more older ones come over because they were either they didn't have a boarding school they could go back to, or they were struggling on their own.
Right.
So yeah, we got 8 of the 9 here.
Yeah. Well, look, if it stays online, you can really be anywhere, right? And that's the key.
Yeah. Well, I actually no. Even with us, we've only got 50 something people, but going virtual really democratized, our company that way, and we're going to stay virtual. And I don't know, there's pros and cons to everything. Yeah. And I think to me, it seems like this whole pandemic really is like hitting a reset button on a lot of the ways that we work. Yeah. A lot of again, so like this big jigsaw puzzle that's gotten like trash and thrown up in the air, but all these pieces are going to come land in new ways and new patterns that are going to work. Yeah. Can't predict what they're going to be yet. Some of them.
Well, you talked about how we're finding working home. And I think, what we're finding across the board is the commute time, as much as we griped about it, was at least a delineation. It was a psychological delineation. You had a sort of a break. Right. I'm going to leave the office now. I'm going to get in my car, public transportation, whatever it is. Right. When I land home, I'm in a different frame of mind. I go to a different world. Now that it's all blended together, people are having a hard time with the boundaries. And so we're trying to say, look, is there a way to encourage employees to create a virtual commute? Right. And what does that mean? Obviously, look, if you want to go around and walk around the block, you can, but maybe do something else in that half-hour time, in that 1 hour time. Right. Don't just go directly from your bed to your desk. But find something you can do to slowly get you. I got into
kids.
I got into pour overs, and so that's one of my morning routines is to take my time, do the pour overs, right? Listen to the news before you kind of kick into gear. I think replacing old things with new things is important.
Yep, it's true. I got to imagine that for a lot of people. And I'm sure even employees because you have so many, even things like mental health or isolation, loneliness. There's got people who live alone. It's going to be a real challenge for a lot of people. We, in some sense, we're lucky in the sense for us, it's almost like a vacation because we don't have to run back and forth to school 10 times a day. Right. Got the family here. So it's actually been fun that way. But I know that I have one of the 21-year-olds who's here was in Los Angeles and she was really struggling on her own for a lot of reasons. So it just wasn't a healthy environment. She just needed to be back with us. She was, but I think that's going to be, if what mental health was already one of the number 1 challenges in the States before pandemic, who knows what it is now.
Yeah. You see both sides. It's the same thing. It's you see families that are nesting and reconnecting and seeing an incredibly positive experience. Yeah. And then the same thing with our families. You see folks that are just alone at home. And you have kids, right? Got 1 daughter.
Yeah. How old is she? What's it like? Being at home all the time with her. What's that adjustment been like?
She's like 10, so she's fine. Yeah, with 1 kid, it's a little easier. No, it's good. It's good. She thinks it's just normal. they adjust pretty quickly.
Do you think that when things start to loosen up, do you want to go back 5 days a week to the office? Is that useful to you, valuable? You want to do 3 days? What do you kind of see as a rebalancing of how you want to work and where? And I think maybe a year or 2 out. It's
a big reset. And so imagine everybody takes out a sheet of paper and says, you get to write the future. And we have, call it 1,300 employees and you see 1,300 sheets of paper and you got to sort through what that all means. There are parts of the world that are returning. We don't have anybody in Tel Aviv, but I hear the Tel Aviv offices are open up again. We have folks in Beijing. The Beijing office is open. The first couple of weeks, we're seeing about 10 to 20% of the people go back any given day. It's definitely heavier Mondays, a little lighter Fridays. But I think, the big picture is if you're blessed with choice and you can actually, have more choices to design how you want to work, that's a good thing. Now, yes, there's a lot of things to sort through, and what do you do if there's a group of people in the office, but there's 3 people that are working at home, and how do we use technology to level it all? I think those are all the things to sort through. But I'm with choice comes a bunch of decisions, but it typically, if you give it enough time, it usually lands in a good place, in a new equilibrium.
What do you kind of see as some of the best opportunities for either yourself personally or Zuora through all this? And say, in addition to having this choice to kind of have a new way to define how you want to work with a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, well, there's a few things. Let's start with the macro, and then maybe let's dive into the company. At a macro level, we talked about the 2007, 2008 downturn, and people sometimes you take things that are around you for granted now, but in 2007, cloud computing and SaaS was not the norm, right? When you left in Salesforce, we were probably still selling primarily to small companies, right? Companies less than 1,000 employees. And if you look at Fortune 500 companies, right? Big companies, the CIOs of big companies, they're eyeing, the software as a service thing, kind of interesting, right? But they were still saying, look, I think we're going to keep our Oracle, we're going to keep our SAP. We're not quite sure that customizations are going to work. We're not quite sure how integration works. We're not quite sure how security works. And what you see in 2008 is being forced then to say, look, you don't have any cash. And so you can't buy that big software. It's like, well, let's go and try the software as a service stuff out. And they came back saying, well, look, it's not so bad. I can actually integrate. I can customize. I'm comfortable with the security now. And so you actually saw Fortune 500 CIOs flip from a on-premise first, right? And I'll use cloud if I don't have another choice, to cloud first, right? And we'll use on-premise if there's no cloud option, right? And so that pivot was really important. That pivot happened in a really quick amount of time because the downturn accelerated things. And so the question for us now is all of us is how is this going to accelerate things? And so yes, work at home is a big topic. For our business, we're obsessed with subscription-based business models, and we see the subscription-based businesses are just simply much more resilient, right? Subscription companies that we're not seeing, they're not worried about a 70-80% downturn in revenues overnight, right? Because you've got this customer base that has a built-in inertia, built-in loyalty, right? They're not going to all churn out overnight. So you can adjust to these businesses much better, and then you have a relationship with your customers, and you can talk to your customers and say, okay, well, these things might not be relevant. Like, so restaurants, well, Resi is one of our customers. Obviously, restaurant reservations aren't as important, but there's still restaurants out there. They're wrestling with home delivery. They're wrestling with curbside pickup. So how can we pivot our services to meet our customers' needs in a different way? And so you're much more resilient. You're much more agile. So we think that once the world sees this, it's going to push the world more to these type of customer-centric, subscription-centric business models. The office spaces, everybody's saying, there's a report that I saw this morning that says, well, even before the pandemic, offices were often 50 to 75% empty. And that's sort of the dirty secret that people have. And, the stats seem kind of large. But we sense that people want the office space to just operate very differently. Like the idea of sitting in a cube, right? We'll give people a desk. And you look around and they don't sit at the desk. They want to take their laptop. They want to go to the kitchen. They want to go to the sofas. They want to go to the lounge area. They want to go sit by a window, right? And at first we thought, hey, that's just how they want to collaborate. But then, they put on their earphones because they don't want to be bothered, but they're sitting in a community setting. And I think we're just all used to that because we've all worked at Starbucks, right, when we had to in a down. Yeah. And so I think people just want a very different work environment. And this is a chance to say, look, if we're going to have to reconfigure our offices, right, for social distancing and whatnot, right, how can we redesign in a way that's just much more in tune with how people want to work today?
Yeah, it's true. I know to me, it's something helpful to kind of move around versus being in one spot in one location.
I find that too.
Staring at the screen,
Yeah, you just get better creativity. You get better energy. You don't fall into a big rut.
Yeah. I remind myself, even, phone calls, if it's not like this, why not do it outside on a walk
Yeah,
with
you
a
still have
friend
to
or
do that. Yeah, we encourage it. Yeah. Yeah, let's get
yeah.
off the Zoom and just get on a phone call and walk around.
Have you seen, so I know that you've had some great blog posts, get your newsletter around, or even just in talking to customers, interesting kind of pivots. You mentioned, was it Resi as
Right.
one, but yeah, any interesting pivots you think are working or maybe not working, but just might be interesting. Some of those Oris customers or things you've seen around.
Well, I really love the Fender story, and
Yeah.
just the arc of the story. Fender hired a new CEO, Andy Mooney, and this is one of the favorite stories in the book that you mentioned, the Subscribe book. So, encourage everyone to read it. But if you read it and heard the story, apologize for the repetition. But he came into the company, and he came from Disney, which is always service centric, customer centric. He said, look, let's look at it from the customer standpoint. How about selling guitars? And so, commissioned a study. And they said, it turns out that 50% of the people buying guitars are first-time guitar buyers. It's like a lot of new people, right? And a lot of new people coming into the industry, which is a really good sign. And he said half of them were actually female, right? And so their marketplace is expanding, their customer base is expanding. But like I think 90% of them quit after 6 months. So it's just too hard. And then the guitar just sits there. And now, if they carry them over the 1 year hump, then they tend to play for life, right? They get to this place where they enjoy it, they learn it, and they tend to play for life. And so, like any industry, if you look at a technology industry, like where you're losing 90% of your customers, right? That's not good. And so they said, well, what do we do about that? And so they launched a whole bunch of digital applications. And is that your guitar? Was it a bass?
Yeah, it's one of them. It's a travel guitar. I'm still learning. I'm in that first, I'm really early kind of like sticking it out. I've got a few chords, but
play? How are you learning?
I've tried some online stuff. I should try Fender Play.
Really good.
There's a friend from LA. I've got one friend who just helps me out. He's a tech guy. We just talk and teach me a few things. Another guy who show up at the time and pay him. So I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring out the best way to learn. But
$10 a month. $10 a month.
It takes
at your own pace, right? You can certainly get live lessons to supplement.
Check it out. It just depends on how simple it is, because even some of the other ones like guitar, I tried a couple and I'm like, man, I'm not even good for like the basics.
I was playing Peter Gunn. You know that you date ourselves, right? But the old Spy Catcher car driving video game, right?
Yeah.
So like playing that was like the first hour. You're playing Bob Marley, Waiting in Vain. I mean, it's just two chords, right? But you can strum along and sing Bob Marley. It's a lot of fun. They did a really good job.
Yeah, I'll check that one out and try it. I've tried maybe a couple, and I don't know, it's all been worth trying. I'm still just finding my way to, but I know I want to do it. It's one of these things I've been playing with because now extra time without having to run people back and forth to school 20 times a day. It's like morning walks, drawing. By the way, highly recommend Art Hub for kids. Just for fun little drawing videos.
Yeah. All this
and
yeah. So the Fender, I mean, this story was 3 years ago, and they've had it out there. You buy a Fender guitar now, you get a little thing that says sign up for Fender Play, and they did okay, right? But it kind of went along. But they said, hey, all of a sudden everyone's working at home. Maybe they want to learn how to play the guitar, just like you. And so they offered, I think, we'll do 100,000 free. You get 90 days for Fender Play for free for the first 100,000 signups. They blew through that in 36 months, 36 hours. And so they said, okay, well, let's lift the limit to 500,000, and they lifted all the way to 1 million. And so there's 1 million new guitar players right now. Maybe they had a guitar under their bed, maybe they bought a new guitar online, but that's it's a really cool story. And so you imagine, you're a company out there selling a product, and your product is sold in stores. And you don't really know who your customers are, right? Because an anonymous customer goes to the store and now all the stores are closed. What do you do? But if you have this digital relationship with your customers, you can start to amplify it. And it's, the work that did 2 to 3 years ago, now that COVID is hitting, it's really turned into this amazing success story for them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm going to try it out. So I know we got to bring it to a close here in a second. Any last advice for people out there who, especially the ones that might be kind of stressed, uncertain, doubtful, because there's a lot of that in the world today?
Look, you were early days at Salesforce, right? What I loved about what you did was, you went into a space, right, that everything we were doing was all inbound, right? And you said, this inbound stuff is okay, but you created the whole outbound model, right? We called it, EBRs and whatnot, and
way back then.
Way back then, right? And it's that learning that you built upon it, and it's turned into this amazing business that you have. And so when I look at these opportunities, I say it's a mindset that the early stage folks often have, which is at moments of chaos are the opportunities, right? Because everything's new, and so there's enormous chance to go find these things. And so I tend to be excited about these moments. I tend to be excited about when there's a lot of change. My mind tends to kick into a higher gear and say, well, gosh, what's going on, and what do we do about it, and what to think about it, because those are the great opportunities. And so I think right now, yes, there's a lot of anxiety in the world, and it's true. And we got to show a lot of empathy, and we got to give back to the community and help the world through this. But from a business perspective, at moments like these, oftentimes are where the great opportunities lie.
Yep, true. So, Tien, really want to thank you. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I don't know what you say, 100% agree with what you just said in terms of being excited about the opportunities, or at least refocus on that, because it's true. It's like cracks in the dike after there's an earthquake.
That's right.
I think of that, we got to.
What's a good Scottish saying then? Or even maybe
I'll have to go find one.
All right.
I'm sure there's something around haggis. I don't know what it is though.
Of course.
When you shake the haggis loose.
It's certainly a haggis. It'd be a Robbie Burns poem or quote, but I wouldn't be able to pronounce any of it, even though I do try once a year at Robbie Burns Day and embarrass myself.
What was the Mel Gibson battle cry? It was probably that.
There you go.
That's right.
So
good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Tien.
Of course. Yeah.